Vanderbilt used to be the laughingstock of the SEC, but 5 years into the future, could they make the college football playoffs? This is the story of how head coach James Bordeaux turned around a program, and after 4 years of being consistently average, the Commodores went into year 5 with bigger goals. Preseason first-team All-American Scott Gandy started his sophomore season off by putting us up 6 on the Mountaineers, and on the next drive, senior Patrick Smith gave us a 14-point lead on the 21st best team in the country. Our new offensive coordinator Bill O'Brien had elevated our offense, and by the start of the second quarter, it was obvious it was on another level. This play from Scott Gandy and senior Quincy Skinner Jr. was all over SportsCenter, but our offense wouldn't carry us to the playoffs alone. So it was a good thing that our defense was dominant. They held West Virginia to 3 points in the first half, and by the third quarter, it was obvious that this was the best Vanderbilt team we'd ever had as we took a 25-point lead with this bomb from Scott Gandy. I couldn't believe it, but we blew out a top 25 team in their own stadium, and this was just the start of Scott Gandy's dominance. Going into our rivalry game against Ole Miss, we were ranked in the coaches poll, but it was raining, we were on the road, and we were playing our rivals, so we knew a win wouldn't come easily. However, when you have one of the best quarterbacks and wide receivers in the nation, you're able to dominate games like that. Right before halftime, Scott Gandy found Brian Canary on the dig route, and we went up 17 on the Rebels. And to open the second half, sophomore receiver Brian Lumpkin caught his first touchdown of the season, but with 2 minutes left in the third quarter, Ole Miss quarterback Dane Nash threw a dot and cut our lead to 12. And before you could blink, Ole Miss was within a touchdown. Our offense couldn't get anything going, our defense couldn't get a stop if their lives depended on it, and we had choked a 27-3 lead. We were almost on the Falcons level, but fortunately for us, we had Scott Gandy, not Matt Ryan. Somehow our 59 speed star became prime Lamar Jackson, and he got us into field goal range with this run. On the next play, while trying to center up a game-winning field goal for us, Patrick Smith broke this huge run, and even though they iced us, senior kicker Joe Samuel won us the game as time expired. In the following week, it was the battle of the undefeateds, and that's when everything went wrong. Scott Gandy went to scramble to pick up the first down for us, except he ended up hurting his back on the play, and he was out for almost the whole season. Now our fate lies in the hands of redshirt freshman quarterback Mike Johnson, except it didn't, because a few plays later, he got hurt as well. He had gotten a mild concussion on that play, and now third stringer Quentin Brown had to step in for the Commodores. Fortunately, our defense was locking up, and senior Patrick Smith had to step up as the leader of our offense for the game. Somehow we were the first team to get on the board, and we'd go into half up 6. However, Memphis didn't waste any time getting into the end zone, and they had a good start to the second half. We were struggling to get anything going, and we went into the fourth quarter down 4. However, Quentin Brown was slowly starting to get more comfortable, and we were able to move the ball a little bit. A few plays later, we were able to score our first touchdown of the game, and on 4th and 3, senior safety Marlon Sewell made the play of the game with this tackle. I was hoping we would just run out the clock, but Memphis wasn't willing to bend over and give up just yet.
What?
However, our defense continued to hold it down, stopping Luke Bell on 4th and 3. So then we made Memphis burn their 3 timeouts and went up 6. With 12 seconds left, we stopped the Tigers one last time, and we survived with our third string quarterback. We were sitting at the top of the SEC, and our backup QB had to somehow take down number 17 Auburn. Mike Johnson was surprisingly able to find Quincy Skinner Jr. over the top of the Auburn defense less than 2 minutes into the game, and our offense was moving the ball all over the Tigers. Patrick Smith was having one of the best games of his career, and he wasn't showing any signs of slowing down as he took this halfback screen all the way down inside the 10. He finished off the drive getting into the end zone on the next play, and we went into halftime with a 14-point lead. This run right here put Patrick Smith over 150 rushing yards for the game, and we were able to take a 3-possession lead. Patrick Smith had played the best game of his career, and through our first 4 games, our defensive play had been exceptional. But we had to focus up, because this was the biggest game in Vanderbilt history. We were undefeated, and if we won this game, we had a good chance of winning the SEC East. Backup quarterback Mike Johnson had to step up his game if we were going to win, and this deep ball to Quincy Skinner Jr. really boosted his confidence. And then the worst turnaround ever happened. Johnson used his legs to pick up a big gain, but the wet ball slipped out of his hands. Alabama picked it up, and senior safety Roy Mason took it all the way for 6. But we bounced back and tied up the game. With less than 30 seconds left in the half, we were down 10 until Mike Johnson found James Parker, who broke a tackle and scored. To start the third quarter, Brian Lumpkin caught this slant, and he took it all the way to the house on the Crimson Tide. And after a huge interception, we handed the ball off to Patrick Smith, and he got into the end zone. But we got greedy, and we faked a field goal instead of taking our 3. It didn't pay off, and Alabama drove 96 yards down the field to get back into the game. Jalen Milroe and the Crimson Tide had the ball down down 3, and he was out for vengeance, stiff-arming 2 of our players and knocking them out. Unfortunately, we couldn't stop them, and JoJo Earl was able to create 100 feet of separation to put his team up 4 with less than a minute left. On the kickoff, James Parker finally had his first decent return of the season by turning on the Jets and making it all the way to midfield. Could the freshman quarterback clutch up against Alabama? We were about to find out because Brian Canary broke free, he was open, but Roy Mason read it perfectly and he intercepted Mike Johnson. Once again, we fell just short of beating Alabama. However, the season was far from over, and if we could beat undefeated Middle Tennessee State, I would be off to my best start ever at Vanderbilt. We started off hot. Mike Johnson connected with running back Dylan Betts-Pauley, and he ran into the end zone untouched. Right before halftime, Patrick Smith rushed in for 6, and we took a 28-point lead on this Mike Johnson dot. This team was special, we still had a chance at the college football playoffs, and Mike Johnson went from a backup to that guy. We had a chance to climb into the top 10 if we could beat Georgia at home, and on our first drive, the halfback screen created a wide-open Patrick Smith, and we were on the board early. I don't want to talk about how it became 3rd and 34, but it didn't matter because Mike Johnson was able to find James Parker over the top, and offensive coordinator Bill O'Brien was loving his new versatile weapon he had at quarterback. Even though we went up 14 early, we couldn't get complacent against Kirby Smart and the Bulldogs, and on the kickoff return, senior receiver and kick return specialist James Parker wanted to make his mark on the game. That's exactly what he did with his 77-yard return, and by halftime, we were up 10. Georgia came out and scored on their first drive, and we needed to come back with a response against the Bulldogs, but while trying to make a play, Mike Johnson got rocked, and he fumbled the drive away. We passed up on a field goal to run this fake, and Mike Johnson was able to find backup running back Dylan Betts-Pauley to put us up 10, and just when I thought Tyson Russell was going to end the game with this interception, he missed the ball, and Georgia was in a prime position to score. On the next play, Robert Bentley hit us with the option, and he scrambled in to make the game a close one. After the Bulldogs put Mike Johnson and the Commodore offense in a box, we needed our defense to come up with a big stop, but they used the same play we opened the game with, hitting us with the halfback screen, and that got them all the way down to the 2. And then Robert Bentley finished the job. Once again, the ball was in Mike Johnson's hand, and he had the chance to prove to the world that he was clutch. We had worked our way all the way down to the 3-yard line, and we pulled the unexpected by running the ball, which put us up with 5 seconds left. Mike Johnson continued to make a name for himself in our win, and we were playing Texas A&M for the first time since the realignment. They were the first ones to find the back of the end zone, and near the end of the second quarter, Mike Johnson threw his first terrible interception, and junior cornerback Gene Anderson was able to take it all the way back to put the Aggies up 13. But that was a much-needed wake-up call, and Patrick Smith got us right back in it. To start the second half, Brian Canary dusted cornerback Gene Anderson, Mike Johnson hit him in stride, and he turned on the burners to give us the lead. On our next drive, Brian Canary continued to feast, and we had completely changed the game. The versatility of Mike Johnson was clearly going to be a problem for defenses over the next 4 years, but the real question was, who should be the starter when Scott Gandy returns? That was going to be one tough decision to make because we were now sitting at 7-1, and Johnson had an incredible 72% completion percentage. But if Big Mike wanted to be the permanent starter, he was going to have to continue to win, and he started the game by finding Patrick Smith for an easy 6. But for some odd reason, the Cox always gave us a problem. However, we scored right here, and right before halftime, Patrick Smith picked up his 3rd touchdown. But South Carolina wouldn't go out without a fight, so Mike Johnson led us all the way down the field by throwing lasers left and right, and then Patrick Smith ran in for his 4th touchdown. I was a little surprised South Carolina went for it here, but our defense clutched up, and a couple plays later, senior running back Patrick Smith took this halfback screen all the way to the house to put us up 21. We got another stop on 4th down, and then for the first time in weeks, Quincy Skinner Jr. finally made a big play when Mike Johnson hooked up with him for a 69-yard gain. Then Patrick Smith rushed into the end zone, and with his 6-touchdown game, we got to beat the Cox. This was when everything got serious. We were the 8th best team in the nation, and if we could win at the Swamp, we had a good chance of potentially making the college football playoffs. We were the first ones to score, but Neil Gaines and the Gators responded right back. However, with less than 2 minutes left in the half, Mike Johnson scrambled to put us back up 7, and we went into halftime with a lead. But it didn't last long. Mike Johnson and Brian Canary had plans to win the game though, and they were moving the Commodores all the way down the field. Because of them, in just 3 plays, we were able to go 84 yards to take our lead back on the Gators. On the 2nd down play, the Florida quarterback tried to take out our mascot with this throw, but then he decided he wanted to start being accurate again, and the Gators were able to make it 21-21. Fortunately for us, Brian Canary was not finished as he dusted senior cornerback Bernard Gant, so Mike Johnson could deliver this dime to him, and just a few plays later, Patrick Smith walked into the end zone. From there, we would get a stop, score another touchdown, and run out the clock. Patrick Smith was also a Heisman candidate, and we needed to win just 2 more games. It felt good to be at the top of the SEC East, but if Kentucky beat us, they would become the #1 team in our division, and they were unfortunately off to a hot start. However, we responded right back as our running game was incredibly difficult to stop, and with 1 minute before halftime, we continued to shove it down their throats. Later in the third, Mike Johnson connected with Brian Lumpkin, who immediately fumbled it away, so I challenged the play, and they confirmed the fumble, but he clearly never had possession of the ball. So despite being the home team, the refs were not on our side, but we did need their help to win this game. With less than 4 minutes left, we went up 15, and we should have sealed it up on 4th and 16, but halfback Andy Davis' son, star cornerback Greg Miller. However, we were able to get a massive stop on the 2-point conversion, and we were 1 game away from making the SEC championship. We were the 6th best team in the country, and our last game of the regular season was at home against our biggest rivals. On our first drive, we were able to score with ease, and it was clear that Mike Johnson didn't want to lose his starting spot at quarterback. Even though Scott Gandy was going to be healthy by our next game, he hadn't taken us to our best season in program history, so it seemed like the former backup had the upper hand. We were running a train on the Tennessee defense, and I honestly don't know how they continued to take it over and over. Mike Johnson had carried us to our biggest win in program history, and the SEC championship was set. Despite Scott Gandy being healthy, I named Mike Johnson the starter. We went down 7 early in the SEC championship, and our freshman QB was incredibly nervous, but I continued to encourage him. He hit Brian Lumpkin on the slant, who turned on the burners and ran for a 46-yard touchdown, and with about 5 minutes left in the second quarter, Johnson and Parker made an incredible play to give us the lead. On the next drive, Missouri didn't get any pressure, which led to another Lumpkin touchdown on a broken play, and we were playing the best football we had ever played. Backup QB Quentin Brown even got minutes in the fourth quarter, and we ended up winning our first SEC championship 59-21. Your Vanderbilt Commodores were in the college football playoffs. Despite having 25 total touchdowns, Preston Smith didn't win the Heisman, but senior Devin Lee won all 3 of these defensive awards. Mike Johnson was playing incredibly well, and we had 3 1,000-yard receivers. The college football playoff semifinals were off to a bad start when Heisman winner Will Taylor put Clemson up early, but Mike Johnson responded right back. And this was unfamiliar territory for the Vanderbilt football program, but we still had a chance to make program history, and star running back Patrick Smith was running like a madman in his last game ever. We ended up taking a 4-point lead midway through the second quarter, but we couldn't stop the best number 16 to ever play quarterback for Clemson, and the Tiger defense was giving Mike Johnson all sorts of problems. We went into the half down 6, but in the third quarter, Wesley Smith made a huge play picking off the Heisman winner. Unfortunately, we weren't able to do anything on offense, and on 3rd and 1, we needed a stop so bad, but we couldn't get it. However, our goal line defense completely locked up, stopping Will Taylor multiple times and forcing them to take 3. Mike Johnson played well above expectations this year, but he also made freshman mistakes that really hurt our chances of winning, and after Clemson ran the option to perfection, we found ourselves down 15. They went for the 2-point conversion to put us out of reach, and they got it. Unfortunately, our great run was over. The other semifinal game had a wild score, and in the national championship, Clemson prevailed, but the real question was, should Scott Gandy or Mike Johnson be our starter next season?